So, I wanted to get a relatively, hopefully at least, short video out regarding my thoughts on the panic of sorts that people are having regarding Elon Musk and his talks of buying Hasbro. There has been some small amount of panic in the D&D community over the absurd comments that Elon Musk had made a few days ago that he would like to buy a Hasbro, and he was relatively angry about their recent warnings in the 40th anniversary book Making of D&D. It's not entirely shocking that this outrage came in a reply from a, well, relatively well-known right-wing troll, Grumps. Whatever political views you have, it's up to you, but this guy really hasn't done anything of actual substance in a long time, since arguably vanilla World of Warcraft. He still hasn't finished many of his proposed games, and I have no idea why the internet listens to him at all, but who knows. The anger was that this forewarning in this book was regarding language and general choices made in the original D&D, which, original D&D is old. Things in that could be viewed inappropriately or just generally rude, show blatant misogyny, racism, and the general more unpleasant isms. There is the argument that it was a book that was a byproduct of its times, and in some ways, yes, but the forewarning also goes on to say that it went far further than that and displayed views that were a bit difficult even then. If you're someone well versed in history or literature with old authors, then this was probably no shock to you. There are endless examples of writers being like this, of people being shaped by their environment, of genuinely having more conservative views or views which are just plain inappropriate in the modern day. I mean, look at beloved things. Look at Disney. No one would like actual Walt Disney, even though people enjoy their creations nowadays. You just don't talk about it. This foreword is honestly, in my opinion, really not that relevant. It's something for those who are a little bit more sensitive or lack media literacy. It's generally a way for D&D to show and beloved the old original form of D&D, but also kind of sit back and go, well, look, we don't stand with this. None of this is our opinions for now, but this did happen. And at the end of the day, they're a company. This is the free market and all that capitalistic rubbish. This is just them getting ahead of the curve, being ready for what people might say. But of course, the internet's clown, Elon Musk, had to comment on it and has made several references that he would buy Hasbro because of it. I have to say that for the D&D community, this honestly shouldn't be a worry. As it is, Hasbro right now isn't even the perfect company. They have many flaws. If you've been paying attention in 2023 and 2024, well, you know what I'm talking about. There are many varied crises that led to just all of the things that have happened. The creation of the OGL, alternate games like Draw Steel, numerous other third-party publishers, the Orc license, at least if I'm remembering that name correctly, and then there's other numerous alternatives that are out there, like Pathfinder 2nd Edition. 5e and its earlier editions are locked in now. Buying Hasbro will do nothing. No matter how terrible Hasbro is now, and how terrible it would be under Elon Musk, it doesn't matter, because D&D has never been about the company. It's about the DMs and the players and what they make D&D be. If, let's say, Hasbro did get bought, then what? A new name altered D&D would pop up in its place, and we would just play that. Or play the old versions. Or ignore the funny little dancing man in the same way that Twitter 2 now exists, and it's blue sky. No one cares, and it shouldn't scare you. There are some concerns, don't get me wrong. I don't want to see things like Magic the Gathering get ruined even more, or watch the alt-right man try and control Peppa Pig or the Transformers. But when it comes to D&D, we're okay. I'm making this video mainly to combat some of the fears and panic I've seen in the community from creators and posters, and to just generally kind of get my thoughts out there. It was a topic that frustrated me, and I felt like I needed to speak on it, even slightly. There shouldn't be concern, I feel. Yes, it is possibly the end of Dungeons & Dragons, whether it's actually happened. Now, I'm not saying the series would just end. What I'm saying is the Dungeons & Dragons that we know now, the phenomena online of 5e, would probably start to fade away. What would Elon D&D be? Well, it's probably a return to all the isms. It's a return to original D&D. Less character choice, less cultures and backgrounds, just standard fantasy, probably more of a war game. That's not bad, per se. I like standard fantasy. I like Tolkien fantasy. People adore that. But a lot of people really like current D&D, and it's about providing more than just that. It provides all those options, maybe not as well as once it did, but there are so many games out there now that provide that far better. Original D&D was made in a vacuum where so many options did not exist. We did not have the internet. We did not have a collective consciousness of what D&D should be. It was just something that a bunch of friends made up, and then a group that expanded beyond there. Now, we would probably end up with less books. The fact that D&D is a book company is often kind of talked about. Wizards of the Coast make books, and those books enforce how Dungeons & Dragons is done. With Elon, I think we just see even more of the same. But less books and all online subscriptions. D&D Beyond. Hasbro is already doing that, and that's already kind of, to a degree at least, what's happening. Over-monetization in the D&D space is already here. To hell with it. One way or another, D&D will always keep rolling on, whether in name or not. It's just that under this Elon kind of Hasbro Wizards of the Coast, we would see, well, more and more AI from the man who wants to make an AI game studio. We'd probably see just shovelware and general AI slot books edited over by a relatively hateful editor as the sole human to actually look at anything. To argue that we need old classic D&D or you're besmirching the memory of such and such, these things don't matter. The dead do not care for what the living think of them. And we have old school D&D. I've seen people making the old school versions of it. I know that there is Shadow Dark, I think, which is kind of that. There are people who are creating more back to war game style games. I even saw, I believe it was Troll Lord Games is making Gary Gax's old castle and kind of content around that. People like old school D&D, and people are still supporting it. To make this argument of, oh, where is D&D now? What has Hasbro done? They just expanded the formula. People nowadays want role-playing. D&D has become about role-playing and the world and the expanded options and all of that. Combat and that old style, it's still there, but it's just not as popular. To give an example of what happens when these kinds of things are under threat. 2 to 3 years ago, the D&D community flourished on Twitter, and it did great. TTRPG space in general did great there. And then it was bought out, and the algorithm slowly killed our ability to share those messages. We couldn't see each other for a flood of bots or right-wing nonsense. And it's taken a long time to rebuild that community elsewhere. It's slowly getting there, and I can now find both myself and others on Blue Sky. I've seen people on Tumblr, I've seen people on Threads, but I genuinely feel like the majority of people has surged to Blue Sky, and whilst it's nowhere near as big, it's getting there, and it's continuing to grow, and we found other ways to continue on, and D&D, the game, would be like that. It's the same community, it's the same views. The world is pretty scary right now, with just general attitudes on these things, and when it comes to D&D and your own personal table, just let all of that leave your head. Don't worry about the nonsense going on in the news and the politics and all that. This is your table. You make all the rules, everything is a guideline. There is a reason in much of my videos, and in the very books themselves, it often states that the DM is the law. Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast could ruin every book, change every rule, and be bought out by the very devil himself to tell you that you cannot play your character in any way that you want. You must be a human fighter, and he must kill orcs, and he must earn gold, and then get drunk in a tavern at the end of the day, and pursue his want in women. But you wouldn't have to do any of that. At the end of the day, it's the community's game. Wizards of the Coast just brings out new guidelines, and we choose what we wish to use. We choose which rules we like, what rulings in particular will enter popular public opinion. You know, there are things like weight and alignment, which some games just don't even use. There are a number of tables who just don't bother. I think I've used weight once, and alignment, whilst it appears in spells, has been used even less. There are rulings which people just go with what's popular. There's spell slots, or alternative spell points, which I've used for the first time in a game only last week. I didn't even know that was an option. There's milestone versus XP. I can't tell you how many games I have played which are now only milestone, not XP. But some people love XP. They find it fun. These are all options that people have made in their own games. My version of D&D probably looks very different from your version, or to a Wargamers version, or someone over on the other side of the world, and how they play the game. And that's great, and it won't change. Don't be fearful of some idiots swinging their money around and saying that they can control your hobby, because they don't. They never will. They're screaming into the void as history notes down their madness, and then the next generation will move on with bigger issues and other things to worry about. Anyway, that's really all I wanted to say. I know it's not a whole load of cohesive thought, I suppose, but I just wanted to kind of get my word out there and say that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what these people say, because at the end of the day, the hobby is yours to make of it what you want. And there are so many other options that if D&D really does fall through, and for some unknown reason we can't play it, there are so many games, guys. There are so many other options. D&D is just one in a sea of many. And if it ever becomes a hateful, horrible game in 5.5, 2024, or 6E, whatever they wish to call it, then, well, screw it. We'll just play something else. But thanks for watching. I know this wasn't the most pleasant video, but I needed to get this out. I felt like I needed to comment on this, so for those of you who got this far, I really appreciate you listening, and I will see you in the next video. Hopefully something a little bit more just D&D relevant and fun.